'cause you're alright. I gotta walk way over town, she's good to me.
For 40 years, he kept quiet, signed the papers, buried the truth. But the paramedic who found Elvis that August morning is finally speaking. He says the bathroom wasn't empty. Someone else was there, someone young, terrified, and quickly erased from history. The world thinks Elvis died alone, but what if he didn't? Stay with us to uncover his truth. The call that would not let him sleep. The alarm clock has not rung yet, but his eyes are already open. They always open at this hour. For more than 40 years, the same moment pulls him from sleep like an invisible hand shaking his shoulder. The sky outside is still dark. The house is quiet. But inside his mind, the radio crackles with a voice he can never forget. He is an old man now. His uniform has long been folded away. His ambulance days are distant memories for most people. But not for him. Never for him. Because on one August morning in 1977, he answered a call that changed everything. And then he was told to never speak of it again. The paper he signed was simple. 3 letters that held a lifetime of silence. NDA, Non-Disclosure Agreement. He put his name on that line and watched his truth disappear into a locked drawer. For decades, he has carried the weight of what he saw, what he felt, what he knew. The secret has lived in his chest like a stone. But that morning began like any other. The dispatch call came through just after 2 in the afternoon. A standard emergency. Medical assistance needed. The address came through the static. 3797 Elvis Presley Boulevard, Graceland. His partner looked at him. Neither man spoke. They both knew that address. Everyone in Memphis knew that address. But knowing where you were going and understanding what you were walking into are 2 very different things. They climbed into the ambulance. The engine roared to life. But something felt different. The air was heavier, thicker. The streets they drove every day suddenly seemed unfamiliar. The radio traffic that usually filled their ears went strangely quiet. Even the sirens seemed muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. His partner gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual. Neither of them said what they were thinking, but both of them felt it. The unease that crawls under your skin when you know something is wrong before you even arrive. The kind of feeling that makes your stomach turn and your hands go cold. As they approached the gates, the world seemed to slow down. The tall iron bars of Graceland loomed ahead. Normally, this place was filled with fans, cameras, and music. But today, there was only silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that pressed down on everything. The gates opened. They drove through. And that was when he felt it. The shift. The invisible line between the ordinary world and something else. Something bigger. Something that would mark him forever. He stepped out of the ambulance. His boots hit the pavement. His medical bag felt heavier than it ever had before. He looked up at the mansion. The windows stared back at him like empty eyes. The front door stood slightly open, as if waiting. He was trained for emergencies. He had seen death before. He had saved lives and lost them. But this was different. He could feel it in his bones. This was not just another call. This was history holding its breath. He walked toward the entrance. His partner followed. The air around them seemed to hum with something unseen. Something waiting. He believed he was there to help one patient. One person in need. But as he stepped through those doors, a chill ran down his spine. Because deep inside, beneath his training and his logic, he sensed it. Someone else was already there. Graceland. Before the world woke up. The inside of Graceland felt like a tomb. That was his first thought as he crossed the threshold. The mansion was famous for its color, its life, its music. But today there was none of that. The air was thick and still, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Every surface seemed to watch him. Every shadow felt deliberate. He had been inside many homes during emergencies, mansions and trailer parks, penthouses and basement apartments. But he had never felt anything like this. The house was not just quiet, it was waiting. People were scattered throughout the rooms. Staff members, friends, maybe family. He could not tell, but every single one of them had the same look. Eyes wide, faces pale, lips pressed tight. No one spoke unless they had to, and when they did, their voices were barely above a whisper. Something had already happened here. He could feel it in his gut. And whatever it was, these people were terrified of it becoming real. His partner stayed close behind him. Their boots echoed on the floor, too loud, too sharp. A woman in a dark dress gestured toward the staircase without saying a word. Her hand trembled. She would not look him in the eye. He noticed things. Small things. Things that did not belong. A towel lying on the floor near the hallway, still damp. A chair pushed away from the wall at an odd angle. A phone off the hook. These were the kinds of details that told a story before anyone opened their mouth. And no one was opening their mouth. He moved toward the stairs. His medical bag felt like it weighed 100 pounds. His partner was breathing heavier now. The tension in the house was contagious. It crawled into your chest and squeezed. As they climbed the stairs, time seemed to stretch. Each step took longer than the last. The staircase felt endless. The walls closed in. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Someone was following them now. A man in a suit. He did not introduce himself. He just walked a few steps behind, silent, watching. His presence made the paramedic's skin prickle. It was not threatening. It was something else, something worse. Control. This man was there to make sure things went a certain way. They reached the top of the stairs. The hallway stretched out before them. Long, dark. The kind of hallway that appears in nightmares. Doors lined both sides, but only one mattered. The one at the end. The bathroom. He could see it now. The door was closed, but light spilled out from beneath it. A thin, pale line of light that seemed too bright for such a dark house. His steps slowed. He did not want to. His training told him to move quickly. Every second mattered in an emergency, but his body resisted. Something deep inside him was screaming to stop, to turn around, to leave this place and never look back. But he kept walking. The man in the suit moved ahead and placed his hand on the door. He paused, turned, looked directly at the paramedic. And at that moment, the paramedic understood. Whatever was behind that door was not just a medical emergency. It was a secret that would be buried, a secret that would be controlled. The man's eyes said everything his mouth did not. You will see what you see. You will do what you do, and then you will forget. The paramedic nodded. He did not know why. He just did. The man opened the door. But before the paramedic could step inside, he heard it. A sound, faint, soft. Not a voice, not a cry, just movement. The rustle of fabric, the shift of weight. Something being adjusted, something being arranged. His stomach dropped because in that single moment, he realized what he was walking into. This was not a rescue. This was a scene, and scenes are made, not found. He stepped forward. The light from the bathroom hit his face, bright, blinding. He squinted, his eyes adjusted slowly. The white tiles, the fixtures, the mirror reflected everything back at him in cold, clinical detail. And then he saw. His breath caught in his throat. His hands went numb. His mind tried to process what his eyes were taking in, but the pieces did not fit. They did not match. Not with what he had been told. Not with what he expected. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. His partner stepped up beside him. He heard the sharp intake of breath, the pause, the silence that follows shock. The man in the suit stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them both. Waiting. His face showed nothing, but his presence said everything. You are here to confirm, not to question. The paramedic knelt down. His training took over. His hands moved. His mind checked for signs. Pulse, breathing, temperature, pupils. All the things he had done 1,000 times before. But even as he worked, even as he followed protocol, his mind was screaming because what he was seeing did not match the story. The position was wrong. The condition was wrong. The timing was wrong. And in the corner of the room, barely visible, something else caught his eye. A detail so small that most people would miss it. But he did not miss it. He saw it, and he knew. This was not what it seemed. The bathroom that held a secret. The bathroom was smaller than he expected. For a mansion filled with gold records and grand rooms, this space felt strangely ordinary. White tiles covered the walls. Chrome fixtures reflected the harsh overhead light. A mirror hung above the sink. capturing everything in cold, unforgiving detail. And there, on the floor, was Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, the voice that had defined a generation, the man whose hips had scandalized America and whose smile had melted hearts across the world. Now he lay motionless on the red shag carpet, dressed in pajamas, his face turned away from the door. The paramedic had seen death before, many times, in car wrecks and house fires, in hospital rooms and dark alleys. But this was different. This was not just a person. This was an icon, a legend, a piece of American history lying on a bathroom floor. But that was not what made his heart race. It was everything else. The room felt wrong, not just sad or tragic. Wrong, like walking into a play after the actors had already left the stage but before the curtain closed. The air was disturbed, recent, active. He knelt beside Elvis and began his assessment. His hands moved automatically through the protocols. Check for breathing, check for pulse, check for any sign of life. But even as his body performed these familiar motions, his mind was processing other details. The towels on the rack were askew. One hung crookedly. Another was bunched up, still damp, as if someone had dried their hands in a hurry. The bath mat near the tub was wrinkled, pushed to one side. Small things, tiny things. But in emergency medicine, tiny things tell stories. His eyes scanned the room, the book that lay face down near the body. The reading glasses beside it. The pajama top was slightly twisted, the position of the arms. None of it felt settled. None of it felt final. It felt arranged. And then he noticed the second presence. Not Elvis, someone else. In the corner of the bathroom, partially hidden by the door frame, stood a figure. Young, slender, face pale and drawn, eyes wide with something that looked like terror mixed with guilt. This person was barely breathing, pressed against the wall as if trying to disappear into it. The paramedic's eyes met theirs. The moment stretched. Neither spoke, but in that silent exchange, 1,000 questions passed between them. Who are you? Why are you here? What did you see? What do you know? The figure looked away first, turned their face toward the wall, shoulders hunched, hands shaking. This was someone who desperately wanted to be invisible, someone who knew they should not be there, someone who was part of a story that was already being rewritten. The paramedic opened his mouth to ask a question, but before the words could foncer, a hand touched his shoulder, firm, authoritative. The man in the suit from the hallway had moved closer. His grip was not violent, but it was clear. Do your job, nothing more. The paramedic swallowed his question and returned to his assessment, but his mind would not stop working. He noticed the way people moved in and out of the bathroom, quick glances, whispered instructions, items being quietly removed or repositioned. This was not the chaos of an emergency. This was the precision of damage control. His partner looked at him from across the body. Their eyes met. His partner had seen it too. The wrongness, the strangeness, the sense that they had arrived not at the beginning of a tragedy, but in the middle of a cover-up. The paramedic checked Elvis one final time. There was nothing he could do. Nothing anyone could do. The king was gone. That much was certain. But how long had he been gone? And what had happened in the minutes before they arrived? Those questions burned in his chest like hot coals. The young figure in the corner shifted slightly, tried to move toward the door, but another person, older, blocked the exit, spoke softly but firmly. The young one froze, nodded, stayed put. The exchange lasted only seconds, but the paramedic saw it all: control, containment, silence. He stood up slowly. His knees ached. His hands were cold. He wanted to speak, wanted to ask, wanted to understand. But the room was already filled with new people, important people, people whose names he recognized from television and newspapers, lawyers, managers, advisors. And with each new arrival, the story changed shape. Questions were answered before they were asked. Details were smoothed over. The official narrative was forming like concrete, hardening with every passing moment. Elvis passed away alone, reading on the bathroom floor, a heart that could not keep up with a body pushed too far. Tragic, sad, but simple. Except it was not simple. The paramedic glanced back at the corner. The young figure was gone, vanished, as if they had never been there at all. But he had seen them. He knew what he saw. Someone else had been in this room. Someone who mattered, someone who was being erased. The authorities took over: police, medical examiners, officials with badges and titles. The paramedic was gently but firmly guided toward the door. His job was done. His presence was no longer needed. As he stepped into the hallway, he looked back one last time. The bathroom was now full of people in uniforms and suits. Cameras flashed, clipboards appeared, papers were signed. And in that moment, he understood. The truth was dying in that room, being suffocated by power and money and fear. By the time the sun set, the official story would be carved in stone, but he would carry the real story in his chest for the rest of his life. The man who was not supposed to exist. The paramedic stood in the hallway outside the bathroom. His hands were still trembling. His mind was racing, and all he could think about was the figure in the corner. The one who had been there. The one who was now gone. Who were they? The question burned in his mind like a flame that would not go out. He had only seen them for a few moments, but those moments were seared into his memory. The pale face, the wide, frightened eyes, the way they pressed themselves against the wall as if trying to become invisible, the way they looked at him, not with curiosity, not with grief, but with guilt. That was the word that kept coming back. Guilt. This person had not been a bystander. They had not been a random staff member checking on their employer. They had been part of something that happened before the paramedics arrived, something that was now being carefully hidden. He watched from the hallway as the figure was escorted away, not by the police, not by medical personnel, but by men in suits, the same kind of men who had been watching him since he arrived, the kind who did not introduce themselves, the kind who did not answer questions, the kind who made things disappear. The figure kept their head down, did not look at anyone, did not speak. They moved quickly, almost stumbling, as if their legs could barely hold them. One of the suited men had a hand on their back, guiding, controlling, making sure they went exactly where they were supposed to go. And then they were gone, down the stairs, through a side door, into a car that had been waiting. The whole thing took less than a minute. Smooth, practiced, efficient. The paramedic turned to his partner. He needed to say something, to confirm what they had both seen. But before he could speak, one of the suited men stepped between them. His face was calm, his voice was quiet, but his words were sharp as knives. You saw nothing unusual. You responded to a medical emergency. You did your job. That is all. The paramedic opened his mouth to protest, to ask who the person in the corner had been, to demand answers. But the man raised his hand. A simple gesture, but it carried the weight of authority, of power, of consequences. This did not happen. 4 words. That was all, but the paramedic understood. This was not a request. This was not a suggestion. This was a command. And disobeying it would bring trouble he could not even imagine. He looked around. The house was filling with more people now. Officials. Reporters were gathering outside the gates. Cameras were being set up. The world was about to learn that Elvis Presley was dead. But the world would only learn the story these men wanted them to know. A simple tragedy. A man alone, a heart that gave out. No complications, no mysteries, no questions. The paramedic realized at that moment that the truth had already been decided. It had been written before he even walked through the door, and nothing he said or did would change it. His partner stood beside him, silent. They both knew. They both understood. Speaking up would accomplish nothing except destroying their own lives. Another suited man approached. This one carried a folder, thin, official-looking. He opened it and pulled out a single sheet of paper, placed it on a table in the hallway, held out a pen. Sign this. The paramedic looked down at the paper. The words were small, dense, legal language that twisted and turned. He tried to read it, tried to understand what he was agreeing to, but the man tapped the paper impatiently. We do not have time. Sign now. The paramedic hesitated. His hand hovered over the pen. Every instinct told him to stop, to read, to think. But the pressure in the room was suffocating. Everyone was watching, waiting, expecting compliance. He picked up the pen. The weight of it felt like a brick. His hand moved to the signature line. He could feel his future changing with every inch the pen traveled. He signed. The man took the paper immediately, slid it back into the folder, nodded once, and walked away without another word. The paramedic stood there, pen still in his hand, staring at the empty table. He had just signed away his right to speak, his right to tell what he saw, his right to the truth. The silence became official in that moment, and it would follow him for the rest of his life. The contract of silence. The paper he signed was not just a document. It was a cage, invisible bars that wrapped around his life and locked tight. A non-disclosure agreement, 3 simple letters. NDA. But behind those letters was a promise that would haunt him forever. Do not speak. Do not tell. Do not remember out loud. The consequences were spelled out clearly, even if he had not been given time to read them. Breaking the agreement meant losing everything. His career would end instantly. His reputation would be destroyed. His family would suffer. And perhaps, in ways that were never written down but always understood, his safety would be at risk. This was not a contract with a company. This was a contract with power itself. The kind of power that controlled stories. The kind that decided what the world would know and what it would never hear. He drove home in silence that afternoon. His partner sat beside him, equally quiet. They did not speak about what they had seen. They did not need to. The weight of it sat between them like a third passenger. When he arrived home, his wife asked how his day had been. He looked at her and felt the words catch in his throat. He wanted to tell her, wanted to unload the burden, but the ink on that paper was still wet. The threat was still fresh. Fine, he said. Just another day. But it was not just another day. And it would never be just another day again. That evening, he sat in front of the television. The news broke just after 6. Elvis Presley was dead. The king of rock and roll had passed away at his home in Memphis, heart failure, alone in his bathroom. The world was in shock. He watched as reporters stood outside Graceland, watched as fans gathered, crying, holding candles, watched as experts discussed his health, his habits, his legacy. Every word was carefully chosen. Every detail fits the official story perfectly. But the figure in the corner was never mentioned. The wrongness of the scene was never acknowledged. The signs of another presence were erased completely. He sat there, hands gripping the armrest, wanting to scream at the screen. That is not what happened. That is not the whole truth. But his voice was trapped behind that signature. Years passed. The memory did not fade. It sharpened, and with it came reminders, subtle ones. A phone call from an unknown number, silent except for breathing. A letter with no return address containing only a photocopy of his signature on that NDA. A man in a suit standing across the street from his house, watching, then walking away. The message was always the same. We are watching. We remember. Stay quiet. He stayed quiet. He watched as books were written about Elvis. Documentaries were made. Theories were shared. Some came close to the truth. Others were wildly wrong. But none of them had the whole story, because the whole story was locked inside him. He grew older. His hair turned gray. His hands developed tremors. His voice grew softer. And still, the memory remained sharp. The bathroom, the tiles, the figure in the corner, the guilt in their eyes. And then one morning, he woke up and realized something that chilled him to his core. He was running out of time. His body was failing. His heart was weak. The doctors had given him warnings, years maybe, not decades. If he did not speak now, the truth would pass on with him. It would be buried in his grave, sealed forever, lost to history. The figure in the corner would remain a ghost. The real story of that day would vanish like smoke. Why he stayed silent for so long? Fear is a powerful thing. It does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And for more than 40 years, that whisper followed him everywhere he went. He stayed silent because he was afraid of losing his job, afraid of being labeled a liar or a troublemaker, afraid of what powerful people could do to someone like him. He was just a paramedic. They were lawyers, managers, millionaires. What chance did he have against them? But fear was not the only reason. There was guilt too, the kind that sits heavy in your chest and never quite goes away. He kept asking himself the same questions. Could he have done something differently? Should he have spoken up immediately? Consequences be damned? Did his silence make him part of the cover-up? Those questions haunted him. Still do. There were moments over the years when he almost spoke. Times when the weight became too much. He would sit down with a pen and paper, ready to write it all down. Or he would pick up the phone, thinking he would call a journalist, a historian, someone who would listen. But every time he stopped, because breaking that silence meant destroying his life. And not just his wife, his children, his grandchildren. They would all be dragged into it. Their names would be attached to his. Their peace would be shattered. So he stayed quiet, and he told himself it was the right choice, the responsible choice. But deep down, he knew the real reason he stayed silent. It was easier to let the legend stand, easier to let the world believe the simple story, easier to protect the image of a man who had brought joy to millions. Who was he to complicate that? Who was he to tarnish the memory of the king? Except memory built on lies is not really memory, it is mythology. And mythology, no matter how beautiful, erases the human beings at the center of it. Elvis Presley was human, flawed, struggling, surrounded by people who cared about him and people who used him. And on the day he passed away, he was not alone. That is the truth that has been hidden. The person in the corner of that bathroom was someone Elvis trusted, someone young, someone who had been with him in those final hours. Their name does not matter now. What matters is that they were there. And their presence tells a different story than the one the world was given. This person was not a stranger, not an intruder. They were part of Elvis's inner circle, someone who had access, someone who cared, but also someone who was erased from the narrative because their presence raised questions that powerful people did not want answered. Why were they there? What happened before the paramedics arrived? How long had Elvis been on that floor? What was done or not done in those critical moments? The paramedic did not know all the answers. He only knew what he saw. And what he saw was a young person, terrified and guilt-ridden, being quietly removed from the scene. Whisked away. Hidden. Erased. The official story said Elvis passed away alone. But he did not pass on alone. And that changes everything. It changes the timeline. It changes the questions we should ask about his final hours. It changes how we understand the people around him and the decisions they made. But more than that, it reveals how protecting a legend became more important than honoring the truth. Elvis became a symbol, a brand, an industry. And symbols cannot be messy. Brands cannot be complicated. Industries cannot afford doubt. So the truth was buried, and the paramedic helped bury it by staying silent.